And good to see you guys again, Allyson, Yetunde,
Yeah,
and Bob. I'm repping my Nissan gear
there it
today.
I
is.
noticed that.
Love
Nice.
Liking it,
it.
Jet. Liking that.
Coming into the
Nice.
closet this morning, I was like, today's the day to bust out the competitive FaZe Clan jersey. You guys front and center. So
That's
uh,
perfect.
Very nice.
um, so today we're going to go behind the brand of Nissan. You guys are in such a remarkable journey. I think kind of the theme we kind of want to talk about a little bit is the past, the present, and the future. And I think to kind of start things off, I wanted to send it over to Allyson to kind of talk about how she came into the role, the brand legacy, and just kind of getting us a little bit more background on Nissan, the brand.
Sure. So I've been with the company about 7 years. I was agency side before that, always in automotive. But I went client side actually about 7 years ago. So I led the Infinity brand, and we were launching some incredible products at the time. And then in 2017, I moved to Japan to work in our global marketing team. So I was the number 2 to our global CMO based in Yokohama, Japan. So I was there for 2 years. And then I came back here 2 years ago as the head of the U.S. marketing team, and was, back towards the end of last year, I was promoted to chief marketing officer, which has been great. And I think I think over the course of the last few years, we've been on a journey. I think that's sometimes that word is overused, but it's kind of the perfect way to describe this. I think the most exciting thing was that in automotive, you have visibility into what your future product pipeline is going to be, and into that. And we knew that we were going to have this incredible product offensive. And so in January of 2020, as part of kind of a prep session, we really wanted to get into who we are as a brand, who we are today, where we've been in the past, but then also where are we going? And is all of that going to be relevant as we get into this product offensive that we knew that we had coming? And so we actually spent 2 days here in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where our U.S. headquarters are. And we had everyone at Nissan Stadium. So if you're a Titans fan, you are now part of the Nissan Stadium family. And it was a cross-functional group. And when I say cross-functional, I mean cross-functional. We had HR, finance, purchasing, design, R&D, manufacturing, sales, marketing, corporate communications. It covered everything. And so we sat there, we even had dealers. So we had several of our dealer advisory board members were there as well. And we sat down and we talked about who Nissan has been on our best day. And what did that look like? What is the attitude? And so we spent 2 days going into and just deep dive and immersing ourselves in where we've been, what the consumer mindset was, what they're expecting in the future, and how can we prepare for that. And so at the end of those 2 days, and I think, as anyone knows that has been in these big cross-functional meetings, kind of 2-day workshops, it's hard to get to a unanimous conclusion. A lot of opinions, there's a lot of work after the workshop, but we actually came to a unanimous conclusion. And we arrived on, and we really landed on, when we are at our best, on our best day, Nissan is about thrilling people at every turn. And we knew that we wanted to take this not just from a brand and a marketing standpoint and consumer facing communication, but also, what does that mean for our engineers? What does that mean in manufacturing? What does that mean from a corporate communication standpoint? And from there, we just started to workshop this. And Yetunde, I'll hand it off to you to kind of explain what some of that process was actually.
Yeah, thank you, Allyson. So yes, as Allyson said, we walked out of that workshop and really we wanted to figure out how do we take this to our employees who are going to have touch points with all of our consumers, right? Because we wanted this message not just to be an external thing, but something we do internally. So what we did was really do thrill workshops with every single function. So Allyson mentioned HR, corporate communication, after sales, R&D. We had thrill workshops with each one of these employee work groups. And in those workshops, we talked them through exactly what was talked about in the summit, right? How we came to the Thrill platform, what it is about Nissan's history that truly makes us a thrilling brand. And then we challenged our employees to go back to their individual workspaces, their individual spheres, to really think about how can I thrill consumers in whatever it is I'm doing, whether I'm providing a service or I'm involved in the product manufacturing, that I'm really thinking about all those ways in which I can thrill consumers. And then beyond that, even internally in our day-to-day working environment, making sure that we're really carrying out those thrill principles, thinking about how I can go above and beyond. I'm thinking outside the box to deliver, so that when each of these employees are doing that on their day-to-day basis, it becomes second nature in terms of everything else that you're doing to deliver to the consumer. Because at the end of the day, it's about making sure that we're communicating that message of thrill to the consumers in everything we do. So that was a big part of that process in getting back to that message back, not just to the leaders that were in the workshop, but to the employees as well.
I think Yetunde, one of my favorite words you used was it's a platform. You don't really hear like that word being used, but it kind of, it just describes the scope of everything that you guys have been embarking on this journey. Now, Allyson, you've been on the job 9 months. You're going into this huge transformation. The pandemic happens. Was there any, did we make the right decision? I mean, talk
Did
about
anyone change anything?
Talk about a first year on the job.
Yeah, I think, I think, did we change anything? Actually, we didn't. It helped us to double down on it. It really became, again, and as Yetunde had said, it's a platform. We wanted to make sure this wasn't a tagline. This wasn't just a line of copy. This was something that was a platform that everyone could execute against. And actually what we ended up doing was doubling down on it. And so, we started first, and, while the teams were leading these cross-functional workshops, we were also preparing for all of these launches that were coming up. And the first one out of the gate was Sentra, which actually we had already started, was kind of in the first, I would say, 5 days or less of launching in early March. And then everything, everything changed overnight. We were launching it during NCAA, which obviously didn't take place. And so I think the pandemic helped us focus, and it helped us really rally around that. And it helped us buckle down and start to roll this out across everything that we're doing. And so I wouldn't say, the executions of what we did obviously changed. And, I think similar to, probably every brand, we adjusted, we pivoted, we did all those things. But for us, it allowed us to be much more singularly focused and really get into and roll out and solidify this thrill platform that we had.
So externally, looking at Sentra, it was the introduction of Brie Larson. And I think you guys have won just a ton of accolades and recognition for a lot of the creative that you saw. I remember the first time I saw this spot, I'm like, is that Brie Larson? Holy crap. And it was, seeing her in a vehicle, it wasn't context that I had associated. And then these spots just came together, and it's been, one of your more successful launches. How did Brie come into the picture, and like, how did that all come about?
It was amazing because this and Thrill all happened right around the same time. I think we knew that, we wanted to launch Sentra. It was a very important product for us, an important segment. And so we knew that we wanted to launch this. We were looking at, I was reviewing some creative and what the launch, what the launch concept was around it. And it was all around not compromising. And then we were looking at a piece of creative that was having someone that's explaining to someone else not to compromise, and to kind of create that analogy. And then we were talking about, well, what's kind of, what's an example of people that can help have that story and can help have that dialogue and that kind of coach player and be the coach in that situation. And Brie was top of mind. I think she was, in the top choice from the very beginning. And I think in the first conversation with her, it was really interesting because she wanted to interview us. She wanted to make sure that we were a brand that she wanted to align with. She wanted to understand where we were going. She was interested in what we were doing from a DEI standpoint. She was interested in our history. And so we had this really great conversation about where we've been, again, you know, similar to what we did with the workshop, where we've been, where we are today, and where we want to go. And then, you know, from there, she signed on, which was great. And we had, I think the consumer reaction to the creative was so strong. And we do, obviously, like many brands, we do a lot of ad testing, we do qual and quant. And the numbers just came through where it was just really resonating. And this story was resonating, and how we're connecting that to, we didn't compromise with Sentra, which was really important for us from a product standpoint. And then we saw the success coming from there. We knew that we wanted to create not just a one and done with a celebrity, but start to have a true brand ambassador that could help us tell this product offensive and this brand transformation story, which is why we ended up entering into a multi-year agreement with her. She was also the talent that makes a cameo at the end of our Rogue campaign. She's been in some sales event work that we've done, and she's currently in a brand campaign that we just launched in April, which is running now, but we're going to be, we have a full year of a brand campaign. So there's additional creative and additional messaging that's going to be coming out.
Yeah. So before we kind of talk about, there was 3 main beats we kind of talked about. It's a lot of our prep. Yep. Very curious, you know, anytime there's transformation within a company, right? You have all these various stakeholders. Was there any groups that were more difficult to get to buy into the overall strategy, or was it, everybody was like, hey, Thrill is the connective platform that we're going to use and roll out across the entire business?
I mean, I would say overall there was support from it. I think more than anything, it was also kind of leaning into the people that had questions, or I would say probably skeptical of it. Because I think, you know, part of the challenge that marketers have is that there's a propensity to change. And I think a lot of, and especially in our history, you know, we've kind of switched, you know, we've changed around, which has created a little bit of an unknown perception of our brand. And so I think for us, we wanted to make sure that actually we leaned into the people who are skeptical. We had data to back it up. The other thing is that we went in and we did a lot of, and Yetunde led a lot of qual and quant research. So it wasn't just, again, you know, it's hard sometimes when you try to copyright a strategy. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing that it was based in research, it was based in data, it was based in unmet needs from consumers.
You mentioned at the very end about the connection between Brie Larson and her appearing at the end of Rogue, some of the messaging. Like Rogue was such a big launch for you guys in the fall. You know, there's a lot of attention being brought to the strategy. Can you talk a little bit about Rogue and what you guys learned during that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from Rogue, I mean, we were producing this right in the middle of the pandemic, kind of right in the heart of it, you know, kind of early fall, which is when things were starting to spike back up. I think the other thing that was going on at the time was election, which I don't know if anyone remembers this, but was very contentious. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that we were showing the capability and the technology and the design of this all new model for us. And we were showing it in a way that invites people in, and specifically family. And what are the different things that the Rogue can help you do? And how can families help fantasize about that? And at the time, you know, there was a lot of talk about road trips, but for the most part, there were a lot of quarantines. There was still a lot of lockdowns. And so we wanted to create this fantasy experience of where would you go today? And what we thought, and we brought Brie in at the end because we thought, you know, people are missing movies. You can go to movies now. The idea of this outdoor theater became, you know, it was a lot more. And then it was just this wink. And so I think we wanted to also help continue the story with Brie. We knew that we were entering into a long-term partnership with her. So we thought it would be a great way to have her be included as this cameo at the end and help us kind of finalize and be the punctuation to our Rogue story.
I'll also add, I think one of the things that we did with both the Rogue campaign and the Sentra campaign was really making sure it was a full 360-degree campaign where we had things going in social and digitally. And to Allyson's point, you know, when we were launching Rogue, it was during that time where there was a lot going on in elections, but people were still locked down. So we leveraged a lot of big partners. We had a big Amazon takeover because people were online a lot more during that time. So we were able to leverage those venues to tell that message a lot more and really bring people into the brand. And I think that was definitely instrumental in making sure that campaign was very successful. And then measuring it from a data perspective, which I'm sure Rob could probably add to that a bit.
Yeah, I agree with you, Yetunde. I mean, I think with the way we built out our new brand positioning, it's allowed us to build these fuller go-to-market ecosystems, and it's allowed creative and media to work more effectively to deliver on what is a much more emotive and inspirational brand positioning. And we've seen it enrich our media thinking. For example, the Amazon idea that Yetunde talked about was a really an interesting buy. But what we've done beyond that is certainly build out ideas that deliver on thrill. And Jeff, you've seen it on your side with the way we briefed the FaZe operationally. Our channels are all about bringing thrill to life now. And what that's allowed us to do is bring the two components of our marketing in terms of our touch points and our messaging together to rally around the new brand positioning, which is making our plans much more exciting as we roll them out too.
Yeah, and I think, and maybe just touching on one other thing, I think Rob and the team did a great job in that, in looking at the data and looking at how are people buying cars and what does that timeline look like? It was also shifting in the middle of this pandemic as well. What we knew is that we knew that Rogue wasn't going to be top of mind for every single person intending that segment the second we went on air with that media. So we had a really smart strategy with how we start to pre-launch it. And the idea of using some of our media partners and how do we start to launch this? So by the time we were actually in full launch mode with the Amazon takeover, we had already started to generate a lot of people that were interested. We had a lot of intenders that were looking at it. People were already taking a lot of key buying actions. And then that helped activate that main media messaging even further.
I think the success of Rogue is just an amazing example of just like incorporating all these various parts of using data and measurement, incorporating the central platform, which I just continue to just love. Rob, can you talk a little about the strategy behind, you made reference to data has always been core to how you guys are doing media buying, but you wanted to also use data and measurement to inform a lot of the creative decisions. Can you talk a little bit about that? That would be.
Yeah. Thanks. I got the data question, so I'll try and make this interesting. I think there's two key parts to this, Jeff. One is just the basic data strategy that we have to sort of enhance our marketing operation, and then also how do we use data to enhance our creative execution in market and make sure that that is integrated into the way we utilize our channel. So let me talk about it a little bit from a data strategy point of view. So as we built out what we call our precision marketing operation, or data-led marketing in other companies speak, it's around four key areas. One is how we plan campaigns, how we measure campaigns, how we optimize those campaigns, and then that ongoing feedback loop of information that comes through our campaigns that gives us consistent learnings around how our consumers are reacting. And we using that feedback loop is even more important now as the data environment changes with the new privacy laws, right? To make sure that we have consistent understanding of, are we getting to our consumers in the right way, and are we optimizing our ability to generate response from them in the right way? And I think where it all begins is with when we build out the audience segments, right? The unique audience segments we have across each of our models within our portfolio, they're the linchpin between that data-driven creative messaging and our media planning. And those audience segments are all tied back to the marketing challenge that one of our models may have. And then what we do is we apply those audience segments to the model campaign to make sure that the solution we come out with is truly data-led. And then from there, and this is probably a bit more for the data geeks on the line here, we have these targeted audiences. We are turning them into anonymized individuals. We've created a people-based identity linkage system so that we can build these customized audiences to ensure that we're future-proofed as we get into this more challenging data landscape. And that's been a big part of our work, and we're still going on a learning curve in that area. Where it gets really interesting is when we start to talk about the way we measure. And I think this has been a really interesting evolution over the last 3 years. And what we've done is we've tried to move from sort of observed reporting of our campaigns to sort of more predictive foresight thinking in terms of helping Allyson and the exec leadership make the decisions that will drive the business growth in the future. So we built out a full funnel measurement framework, top to bottom, in terms of how we engage consumers, that we report out to the organization on a daily and weekly basis. And this allows us to continually monitor how we're doing as an organization in terms of our fundamental KPIs. We also have predictive measurement to explain how we perform or how we do not perform against these KPIs. And that might be in the area of marginal ROI, or how we attribute sales to the spend within our media budget. And then where I think it gets really interesting is where we use prescriptive insights. And that's about building advanced models to inform our business decisions. So we have two major marketing budgets. One is the media budget, and two is the incentives budget. So for the consumers out there, what you get on the hood in terms of a deal on the car, right? Optimizing that balance is key. And then we've also used brand equity predictive models to help validate how we should shift our marketing in the last year or so. And Allyson talked a little bit about that. And that was really key in terms of building credibility around that shift. Then obviously, I think within our data strategy and the application of it, we get into campaign optimization. And a couple of interesting points here. We have a brand layer running now that was launched within March Madness. So we measure that from a pre and during campaign optimization point of view. Our TV investment is partially informed by immediate search traffic that comes from our ads. Okay, TV investment is about driving long-term brand and model awareness, but it's also fascinating to see if it generates immediate audience interest in our models, and it helps us understand the unique day parts or unique programming that goes into our buy and where the effectiveness is. And it's also a secondary understanding of how is the creative developing there. And then Allyson talked briefly about key buying actions, right? So these are the online actions that people take within our digital ecosystem. This is a fascinating world we built out in the last few years that helps us understand how consumers are shopping, right? And we use these online actions where most shopping or most purchase consideration, et cetera, is done now. And we're able to correlate these to showroom traffic and sales. So we're starting to build this sort of full funnel understanding of performance. And then, as I said, we have this feedback loop. So we utilize MMM to look back at how we performed over the year. We can apply that from an ROI point of view. And we also use response curves and marginal ROI to look at as a forward-looking metric in terms of how should we invest budget. And I talked briefly about optimizing that mix of investment in the media budget and the incentives budget. That's a huge challenge for us to make sure we really get that ratio correct across the two, because that is really where you drive those optimal sales levels. And then I think what I really like is, as we get into annual planning, we're looking at our sales goals, we're looking at purchase funnel projections, and we're able to forecast out where our budgets need to sit within the plan for the year, be it by model or overall as an entire portfolio. And so that allows us to sort of set that sort of optimal budget allocation and really helps us in terms of managing the understanding of how we're going to be able to deliver the business plan for the year, certainly. But I think, in terms of creative, and this was the second part of your question, this is where it's been really, really interesting in the last couple of years, Jeff, especially as we've had this new brand positioning to start to land and market. And data has really enabled it to shift our approach in the creative area. I mean, I think about it, in the last 3 years, we've shifted from a TV-led model to a precision marketing-led model, which means we've been able to build out these full go-to-market ecosystems of assets, as Yetunde talked about, and tailor them to the different audience segments. And I think what's really interesting was, as Allyson came on board, we rebuilt our agency operation. We went from a relatively siloed model to a truly integrated horizontal model with Nissan United, which your team works closely with now, and so data sits at the heart of integrated briefings with creative media, and it's enabled the creative culture to become more inspired by data, to think more about a core campaign idea that delivers on thrill in the marketing challenge of the model. And the creatives work alongside the media operation in terms of being able to build out, optimized targeting, optimized delivery in market. So I think it's been really interesting in terms of how data's enabled that. It's also inspired a test and learn culture. We're constantly testing out different ideas in terms of our assets and what works in market. And behind all that, it's, as we built out this model and created this test and learn culture, it's continually helping us validate the role of precision marketing and how it helps us drive sales for Nissan. And you put that on the back of the new brand positioning and the way we're transforming our marketing, and it's a really powerful mix in terms of getting consumers buzzed about what Nissan's doing in market with the new models coming out.
I think the thing that's really like resonating from Thrill being the platform is it's all backed by research. It's all, let's roll it out across all of our partners, and then it's optimization. Are you finding yourself creating 5 times as many assets as you were pre this whole journey?
I mean, I think, yeah, and I get this question a lot, and we are definitely creating a lot of assets. I don't think that is unheard of though, because there are so many different formats. There's so many different platforms that you're actually having to create for. I think the key thing is making sure that you have, what is the core idea, and there are ways for you to tell that story across wherever consumers are going to be in the different formats. So yes, we are absolutely creating a lot more assets. We've gone from, where you could have like a single TV spot to hundreds of assets, because it's going to live on all of these platforms. And I think, the other question that I always get for this is, well, is your budget bigger? No, it's not. And I think that's why you have to be really smart with how you do it. We became hyper efficient with how we started to look at our creative productions. And it wasn't separate productions for whatever the different platform was. It was making sure that we had all of the needs consolidated. We knew what we needed to produce for, and then working, very closely with partners and production companies for how we can actually execute that. And to me, I think that was, we unlocked a big opportunity there, that, I think data helped to inform, but also this platform helped to inform as well.
Yeah, Rob, I think you said something about, we're all data geeks essentially at this particular moment. Has that adjusted any of your kind of media placement and strategy? You made reference to going from a TV model to a precision model. How has that kind of changed, how you're using audio from TV to strategies of new audiences? How does that kind of play into this?
Yeah, I mean, it's shifted a lot. I mean, you could see our channel mix and the investment has shifted significantly over the last 2 to 3 years, with far more digital than we used to be. We've got a much better understanding of within digital what is working, what is not. We've been able to find white space within the audio category, traditional audio and digital audio, and building out execution there, certainly. But I go back to what Allyson was talking about in terms of the increased number of creative assets. And I think, running the media piece, but working very closely with the creative side, and utilizing data to help inspire these guys, it's that you got to find that balance of not locking them in with data, or just giving them the inspiration without being prescriptive about it. And that's been a real learning curve, working with the model teams and the creative teams on this, is what is the right amount of information and data to give these guys to inspire them. You still got to find that balance between the art and the science to deliver on it. But we've found, as we come together and we look at our media investment, that it's really coming together as a very collaborative model now, certainly, in terms of working together.
And I would actually say that the data has been what has helped unlock creativity in this particular case. Because I think we all know, we are so much smarter about how we can reach consumers and where we can reach them and at what point in their purchase cycle. We're starting to get very precise in what we can do. The key and the art to that is actually, what do we say and how do we say it? And that is actually what is going to have that impact. Because if you're going to have a message that doesn't resonate with consumers, it's, to a certain extent, you're wasting your media. So the creative piece of it is what is going to get you that impact. It is what's going to get you to a stronger conversion, but it has to be connected to that data.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Yetunde. Sorry.
I was just going to add, I think another piece to that is, yes, we have increased the number of creative assets, but I think being able to tie that strategy to the data has, Rob mentioned the keyword has inspired the creatives. I think we have a lot of creative reviews where they're constantly bringing out stuff every day. And it's because they're really inspired by the information they're getting from the data. Once they have the strategy, they're able to come up with multiple creatives across platforms that can really identify those audiences that we're trying to target. And that has truly been kind of a winning formula for us.
No, I can fully see it. And I think, going back to the Thrill kind of messaging in January 2020, I think one of the things that was really interesting, I think with marketing, we oftentimes think about the consumer engagement, right? And for you guys took a slightly different approach where you're like, hey, we're going to educate our dealers, our partners, our employees. Yetunde, like being on as a receiving end of being, a long-term partner with you guys, like our entire creative team, all of our account managers, all of our salespeople sat through a pitch where thrill was described to us. And I think it was an incredibly powerful, moment for everybody in our team with really understanding, like, here are our objectives, here are our challenges, here's creatively how we do it, now go. Right. And I think, you're empowering your partners to make these decisions. At the same time, you're having to educate dealers. Can you talk about, like, the collaboration, consensus, like, internal communications? Because I think sometimes that's the unsung part of marketing, but it's so important, especially with consistency.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think one of the big things, once we were able to kind of approve and get this platform and this idea through the organization, we really had to start thinking about how do we communicate this appropriately to consumers, right? We had started it on the creative. Our creative was already communicating that information, but we had to really think about the different touch points our consumers go through during their purchase journey. And what are the entities that really impact those touch points? So there are three entities. We first of all, our dealers, second, our employees, and then third, our partners, which you mentioned. So I'll start with partners. What we did with all our partners was we had Thrill partner briefings. And in those briefings, we literally sat them down, kind of talked them through how we came, Nissan's history as a thrilling brand, the values and principles of Thrill that we embody, right? Being that challenger brand that's always going above and beyond and always surprising and delighting. We had those briefings with the partners to help them to understand what Nissan stands for as a thrilling brand and how we see them really evolving those Thrill principles and coming to life with those Thrill principles in their unique way. Because every single partner that we've joined with, FaZe Clan being one of them, right, has some element of Thrill that they bring to the table. But it was important for them to understand those critical elements of what does it mean to Thrill, so that when they bring ideas to the table, when they bring creative to us, it is truly thrilling and really touching on making that emotional connection with our consumers. So that was our partners. And then second of all, with our employees. So we had, yes, each one of those cross-functional Thrill workshops with employees, but even within our marketing organization, we had to go through the idea of Thrill and exactly what we meant by Thrill and how we want to bring that to market in our whole brand layer, because this idea of a brand layer wasn't something we had done for years in the organization. So really helping them to understand why are we focusing on this brand layer of communicating Thrill, and challenging employees, like I mentioned earlier, to think of ways that they can go back and thrill the consumer in whatever they're doing. And then last but not the least, and probably arguably the most important, dealers, right? We absolutely had to make sure that the dealers had the same message. And as Allyson said, we actually had the dealers involved right from the beginning, right? They were part of that summit that we had in January. They helped to come to that unanimous conclusion and that Thrill message. But throughout from January of last year, as we started all the creative campaigns, we've had the dealers involved in those conversations where we've shared creative with them and really made sure that they are aligned with the Thrill message that we're putting out there. Because at the end of the day, it's one thing for our creative to bring the consumers into the showroom, but we need our dealers, who are the last touch point to the customers, to deliver that Thrill to them. So having that conversation with dealers and making sure they were part of it was critical, so that once the consumers are in the showroom, they're truly giving our consumers a thrilling shopping experience, because that's the most important thing at the end of the day. So we've done that, through all those three groups of entities of people. We've had internal videos with employees as we've launched our Thrill brand campaign. When we launched the NCAA campaign with the NCAA championship, we had Thrill videos going on both internally for employees as well as with our dealers, where we literally had employees talking about what it means to Thrill, what Thrill means to them, how they're thrilling people on a daily basis, not just for consumers, but internally, and doing that with dealers as well. So everyone in the organization has that Thrill mentality and mindset in what they're doing, and we're communicating that to our consumers as well.
I think it's really interesting. It's like you're seeing a lot of attention towards TikTok and a lot of like Starbucks employees and your own employees becoming content creators, but you need to arm them with the proper messaging to get it out. Apparently now people are getting crazy drinks all ordered as a result of these things. But that's truly incredible. Allyson, was there anything that you would have done differently? I know hindsight's always 20/20 when you're going through these as a CMO. It's a lot of pressure to execute correctly. Is there anything you would have done differently?
I think there are tweaks here and there. I think one of the biggest learnings for us was to just go. And I think, we knew what we needed to do. We had a strong approach, and it was just start to test it out, start to get that research, start to have the company pressure test it, start to have consumers pressure test it. And so I think if there was something that I would do differently, there isn't, to be honest, there isn't one thing that comes to mind. And I think it's, and that's how and now we have the, we have the benefit of knowing all the research that went into it. Other than maybe bringing a couple more people in at the beginning, I don't even know if I would have done that, because we just wanted to go. We didn't wait. We had the right people in the room at the time. So it wasn't like, we needed to go through this complicated approval process. I think, we were leaning into people who could be skeptical of it. And so it wasn't like we were just ignoring those voices. We were actually leaning into them. And so to me, it was, the team will know, it was like, always go faster. But I think given COVID, I think we moved on it, and we moved very quickly.
Yeah, I think speed has been the art of the pivot, and speed have been a theme of the last. I was moderating a panel not that long ago, and I was like, we've all learned the master class in improvisation is essentially
right, exactly.
Move I know quick, the best that you can.
Yeah, and I think that was what was so interesting. And even talking, with my counterparts in automotive and in other industries, it's COVID-19 was a situation where there was no playbook. We're all adapting to what's happening in real time. And I think we learned, we gained a lot of muscle memory doing that. And I think, and all of that's still going on. We're still applying that to what we're doing now. And so I think things are happening much more in real time. We're adapting based on how consumers are responding. And I saw one of the Q&A questions was, how are you operating and engaging with consumers? And so much, and the way that I would explain that is that it's on the consumer terms, how people want to shop. It's no longer big brands sitting up here in the ivory tower and telling you what they want you to think about it. It's having that dialogue. It's listening to what they're interested in. It's listening to how they want to shop. That's a huge one right now, especially in automotive, and responding and being able to meet those needs.
I agree, Allyson. I think, Jeff, we're talking about some of the usages of data through the key buying actions, which show us how people are responding to our messaging online, on our sites, within our digital ecosystem. During COVID, we saw significant shifts in the consumer journey, and it exacerbated and sped things up, right? And so you're seeing a much more intensive consumer journey now from consumers, and so that's impacting how we use media to make sure we reflect that. We talked about being completely consumer centric, so the learnings that we are applying are starting to deliver in terms of our media investment and how we execute on a day-to-day basis to make sure that we are aligned to what consumers are doing and making sure we're in the right places at the right time and at the right sort of pace that they're working at as their desire to buy a car has shifted dramatically during the pandemic time, certainly.
Yeah, during our prep call, I actually asked Allyson, like, how do you know when transformation is complete? And he's like, it never is.
It never is.
But this is also...
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, transformation is never complete, but it does look like we're getting line of sight. We're getting some normalcy, which is coming to the world. Like, what is the future for marketing at Nissan look like?
So, and I think this is what's exciting, and I think it starts first with where we're going as a company. And I think we just made an announcement about our commitment to carbon neutrality. So many, and all of our new launches coming up, for the next 9 years are going to be electric. And I think it's looking at what our product pipeline looks like. How do we continue this thrill story? And it's using a lot of what Rob was talking about for how do we take that data? How do we keep informing ourselves? I think when it comes to trends as a marketer, and for in my seat as the CMO, I have to be armed with all of this information. I need to be able to make decisions, in real time that can assess, that can impact where we're going to move as a brand and how we can drive demand. And the other thing too is I need it to manage stakeholders, internal stakeholders. And I think gone are the days where you're not, where there's kind of this wall between you and finance. Myself and the CFO, we need to be connected because I understand how I can move the business. I understand how brand and marketing can drive profitability for the company. And it's about making those arguments, making that rationale with my counterparts in other parts of the organization. And I think, from a future standpoint, I mentioned this before, we have a year-long brand campaign, so we're going to be continuing the story. There's going to be a lot of things. You're going to see a familiar face with Bree. We also have some super exciting and products that are coming up. We're almost on the eve of our all-new 2022 Pathfinder launch. So this is an iconic SUV. If you remember the 86 Pathfinder, we are getting back to rugged. We are getting back to the core of what that product was. And then right on the heels of that, we have the all new 2022 Frontier. And again, this is a model that is a beloved, it's a cult favorite. So we're going to be launching that product as well in the fall. And then we have some even more exciting products coming in different segments, which is the Z, which is our sports car, and then the Aria, which is our all-electric SUV. So we have an exciting product portfolio. We're all exhausted, but we're ready. We're so excited. And we're excited to keep telling the thrill story. And I think the thing that's been nice, especially as we've been doing this brand launch, is that there's so many consumers have so many great stories about their Nissan vehicles that we want to take that spirit. We want to take, some of the things that they've been sending us and, through social media, et cetera. And how do we have that inspire what we're doing?
Yeah, I think these unplanned moments, we've actually seen it even with our program with you guys. We've actually had like three moments that came up just randomly where one of our talent, his brother's car broke down. He bought him a Nissan. We had another piece of content. One of our content creators, he was producing a piece of YouTube content. He literally went and bought a car and gave it to the guy at McDonald's drive-through. Like, here's your car. Here you go. And I think that, capitalizing on these unplanned moments is just, that's the fun and the playfulness that, I think that the brand is beloved by its consumer base, which is just incredible. One of the things that has been a huge shift during the pandemic has been the acceleration of how people want to buy cars. The talking about dealerships and going in historically, you kind of do some browsing. That's fundamentally shifted. And I think it was really interesting to hear during our prep call was just the emphasis you guys are having about maybe just you buy your car online. And it's a very quick and easy process. Can you talk about changing how people acquire your products? Because I think I don't go to restaurants anymore. I order in, everything's delivered. I want my car there this afternoon. I want to buy it maybe through online channels.
Yeah. And this has also been a huge, I wouldn't even say it's a trend. This is consumer behavior. I think, we're big believers in experience law. And once consumers have an experience with a brand, that becomes the benchmark. And it's a very positive one. And I think online shopping is not new. I think we all know that very, very well. We've been doing it for a long time, but it hasn't been as prevalent in some of the larger purchases. So home and car are kind of number one and number two. And so I think, and this kind of came around in the middle of COVID, with so many dealerships, dealerships were not considered essential service. So a lot of the dealerships were closed, but they could do online retailing. We already, at a national level, we already had plans in place and e-commerce plans and what that implementation plan was going to look like. We actually ended up taking projects that were kind of 6 months to a year out and pulling them forward to a matter of weeks and, in 1 month or so. And so we were able to get that. So now you can fully buy a Nissan. You can do the entire research process. You can do the entire desking, paperwork, delivery service. All of that can actually happen online. I think the most important part of this is actually it's based on what consumers and how they want to shop. So it's not either or. a lot of people want to go to dealerships, and actually a majority of people still want to go to dealerships. They want to test drive the cars. That process is all there. For the consumers that are very comfortable in the digital space and purchasing large purchases online and want to have all of that kind of come to them on their terms, this is now an experience that they're able to have now too. It's not one or the other, it's either or. It's not one or the other, it's either or, and it's based on what you're comfortable with.
Are you finding that it's like segmented by audience, like certain audience groups, so they're younger, or their preference is to never talk to anybody, just go have somebody hands in their keys, everything's already been done? Like, is that what the research is showing?
It does, yeah, it does skew younger. So I think, these are digital natives. These are people that are just completely comfortable in that space. So that is what we're seeing. And I think this program has been fully up and running. We actually started trialing it with a select group of our dealers last summer. And so we saw all of these trends, and now it's available, kind of at several dealerships nationwide, in the process of rolling out to even more. And so we are seeing that, these buyers are younger. They do tend to want to have this purchasing experience that's more on their terms. So I think I think the trends that we assumed were going to be there, that's what's actually ending up and who's actually purchasing.
Does that change like your marketing strategy with like messaging at all? Is that like a feature that you guys will highlight in campaigns, or is that like more behind?
I think you have seen our plan. Yes, it is. Yes, absolutely. And I think, because we do see this as a benefit. We see this as, first of all, it's a customer need. It's actually what they're demanding to a certain extent. And so we will be communicating about it, and we are going to be doing it in a big way, which is exciting as well. I think the nice thing about it is making sure people know that it's available. And then there's also the local part of it. So how do we actually do that? And how does that become some of this, what we would call, how do you start to message this to in-market shoppers, which we're also combining those two things. So how do you build that awareness, but then also how do you tailor that and target that messaging?
Yeah, and I think, we have about 10 minutes left, and I think we've kind of gone through a lot of the questions that we wanted to go through. But I guess one of the questions that we arguably the topic of its time, and you guys are very active in this space, is really around like diversity and inclusion. What does diversity and inclusion mean for Nissan, the brand, and how you speak to the general public?
Yeah, and I'll let Rob and Yetunde talk about this, because I think they've been spearheading, this for us as a company. I think what I can kind of kick off with is that I think, a year ago, we knew that we had to change what we were doing. We knew that we had to become much more progressive in how we were approaching this. And I would say over the last few months, I think we've even done another pivot, and we've really gone in and looked at how are we treating. I think in front of the camera, we've been very diverse. We were a diverse company from the very beginning in our founding. I think we've been diverse in front of the camera, and now it's working on things behind the camera and really that equity piece of it. So I'll hand off to Rob and Yetunde on this.
Yeah.
Yetunde, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Allyson. Yes. And just kind of following up on what Allyson said, a couple of things we've been doing is just really kind of going beyond just in front of the camera. So really looking at diversifying in terms of our partners, and really diving deep into making sure that we're really reaching out to those partners that are minority led, that are minority owned, and really making sure we're having those as part of our portfolio. And even generally in terms of our overall marketing plans, whether it's with our partnerships, whether it's with influencers that we're using, making sure that we're getting influencers who are not just diversified, but influencers that really exemplify those elements of who Nissan is, right? Confident, and that we're making sure that these are people who have all pieces of, kind of a diversification, but also all elements of our thrill brand. So we're really diving deep this year and going forward, and not just having a 1-year plan, right? Making sure that we have it for the next 3 to 10 years, and making sure that we have a plan that increases our involvement in that space and with those communities as well.
Yeah, I would agree, Yetunde. This is not about ticking a box and hitting a spend level, Jeff, which is what a lot of has been talked about in the media. It's about investing in these companies and helping them grow and helping them develop the capabilities that we need from them to deliver against our business and marketing objectives and hit the sort of KPIs that we have, right? So we built out a long-term strategy, and we've worked with some of these partners and had lots of discussions with them already. We've had great support from our agencies, our Omnicom on this. And so we've got numerous pieces in place that will make sure that we have much greater communication with minority-owned media partners that will lead to enhanced spend across the board. Across all of the, across African American, Asian American, and Hispanic, also minority-owned partners. But it's also that secondary point of beyond spend of making sure that we're talking to them about what we need from them and how that capital that comes through our spend can help them enhance their offerings. But also talking to them about how can they bring thrill to life for us, also talking to their unique audiences. We had a great chat with Byron Allen yesterday, talking about what we're looking to do and how there are properties within his portfolio that could help us there. And it's also about helping them understand where our brand is going and how their unique capabilities can help us on that piece too. And then I think it's also just about just making sure that dialogue is open and consistent, and they are as plugged in with us on our marketing initiatives as our major partners at the likes of Google and Facebook and Snapchat and the networks, etc. These guys have as much voice and as much presence in those discussions too. And so that's all part of it, that communication plan is part of that long-term strategy that Yetunde referred to also.
I think, and then it's also, it's holding ourselves accountable for it. So, it's making sure that this is top of mind, and it is for us. I think this has been top of mind for, it's part of almost every discussion, if not every discussion that we're having right now. This is something that we are committed to as a company. And I think, and again, we were founded, Nissan's founding was based in diversity. I think we are a Japanese company, but we had American board members from day one. And so this is rooted in, and it was actually a multicultural group. This is something with how we've been founded. And I would think we want to make sure that we're demonstrating that, again, not just in front of the camera, but also behind the camera as well.
Yeah, I think the whole accountability thing, I think, is just an amazing, stand. Like, hey, we are committed to this. This is how we're going to be looking at this as a long-term play. I think even as a creative partner of yours, the flexibility that you guys gave us, like we've told some incredible stories about FaZe Swag, who is the most high-profile Black streamer in the world. I think honestly, my favorite piece of content we've done together. We've told a story about transgender Ewok. And more often than not, some of these storylines are, is it okay to have this messaging out there? And you guys embraced it, and I think that just resonates really across the partners. So going back to kind of like the future, what does the next 6 months then really look for you guys? And then we can pretty much just wrap up, I think, right after that question.
Yeah. Next 6 months are great. So we have, I think starting in July, we have our all new Pathfinder. So that is going to start arriving in dealerships. So we're going to be messaging around that. We're going to talk about it at a brand level. We're going to talk about our legacy and our present and our future in performance and capability. Then we're going to get into the Frontier launch. So the all new 2022 Frontier, that's going to be in market. We're also going to have some messaging around Nissan at Home, which is our e-commerce capability. And then at the beginning in first quarter calendar year, we're on a Japanese fiscal year, so we always have kind of competing calendars. But the first quarter of 2022, we're going to be starting to talk about electrification and getting things ready for our Aria launch, which is our all-electric SUV. So that, we're pretty booked. We're booked. It's hard to get on our calendars right now because we're trying to get all of this ready, but it's an exciting time. And I think that's what's been great about this transformation, is that it's not just something that lives in a PowerPoint, which I think, to a certain extent, I think brands can we can do that a little bit where things live on PowerPoint. This is something that we believe in. It lives on our product. It lives in our dealer network. It lives in how we're going to market with all of this new product. And there's a full commitment for several years to this. And I think that's what's exciting about it. And that's why I think, the idea that transformation is finite, it doesn't, it just evolves. It just transitions into, what the next iteration of it's going to be. And that's what, I think that's what we're excited about. We're excited about where we are today, but we're also excited about where we're going to be going in the future.
How long will Thrill live on as a platform?
And I think it's hard. It's hard to put this into kind of a timeline. I think in a perfect world, it would live forever. But messaging does evolve. Consumer behavior evolves, and the messaging will need to along with that. And so I think for us, we feel again, and I think when it comes to brands and messaging, it needs to be rooted in the DNA of the company. And Thrill is. It may take on different forms as we evolve as a brand, but I think the core of it is rooted in who we've been, and how we were founded as a company. And so that will always be part of it. But I mean, I think for us in a perfect world, it would, we need to have some consistency. So I can see this for 2 to 3 years. And then, based on where consumer behavior is, and, we may look into to make a pivot.
And I think one thing to add to that is that this is all what Allyson said is it's not just a year plan, but it's all rooted in what the consumer wants. We talked about, we did a lot of consumer research where we have brand stories that resonated with the consumer. So the thing is we have brand layers that will continue to go for the next 3 years. We have a lot coming down the pipe, which makes this very, very exciting.
Rob, what's coming up next on for the future for you?
I think, we'll continue to flex the media investment based on, as Allyson said, where consumers are going. It's a major driver in this. I think where it gets really interesting is the activation side. So the world that you live in with Nissan, our NCAA programs, and how we make sure that Thrill lives in those. How do we make sure that our activation programs are thinking about our diversity and inclusivity initiative to make sure that we're talking to the audiences within that. So there's a lot of things that we're thinking about, but as I said, Thrill sits at the core of that, right? But we've got lots of pillars out there. We're going to go into Heisman and the college football season again pretty soon. We're already working on that, and hopefully it's going to be a normal college football season this year. So we're excited about building out a program where Thrill really lands within that, and where we really start to engage our consumers and look for the diversity opportunities in that too. So there's some absolute fundamentals in everything we're doing, which I think we've talked about a lot here. So looking forward to it, and obviously then supporting these launches. Super excited about where the product portfolio is going. It's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really want to thank all three of you for joining this panel. I think it's just super impressive to watch as your partner, the evolution of the brand. Your work has just been really just eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people across the industry. And it's been an amazing journey to just watch this transformation. And I think collectively, I'll speak that everybody's excited to see where Thrill goes next.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Allyson. Thank you, Yetunde. This was really fantastic. Again, knowing I guess we all know how busy you guys are, but hearing you talk about just all the campaigns, all the upcoming launches and the new products coming out, like, it really hammers it home. So it makes it that much more special that you're celebrating with us, and you've given us the last hour of your time. So thank you again for doing that. I've been a Nissan guy. I had the Maxima, the Altima, and then the Rogue, and then we got there at one point in my life, and there was this beautiful sporty 2-door Maxima, but at that point I had 2 little kids, and I'm just like, I want it, but the car seats, and like, it just, so hopefully one day I'll get back to that. But really excited to see what you guys keep working on and keep putting out, especially on the electric side, certainly the zeitgeist these days. So anyway, thank you again for joining us. This was phenomenal. And maybe when things calm down, we'll have you back again soon, hopefully in the real world.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.